Hey, KU fans, welcome back to another episode of the KU Sports Hour here at KUsports.com with Benton Smith, who is now covering a 1-0 unbeaten football team.
Undefeated.
Every day.
Just rolling.
I'm Matt Tate, and we're here to talk lots of KU football as they get ready to head down to South Carolina for a date with Coastal Carolina in week 2. Benton, let's start it off with the most painfully obvious way to open up one of these things. Your first thoughts about the opener. Go.
I think it was obvious that they made the right choice at quarterback. So that was huge that they went with Jason Bean, and it wasn't too much for him. He's a guy who kind of made up ground in the last couple of weeks of the competition. And I think we talked about a couple of weeks ago, that'd probably be the most interesting thing that could happen with that deal. Cause I mean, we kind of knew a lot about Miles Kendrick and Jalen Daniels already, but Jason Bean was this unknown and this guy who really could make plays with his feet. And I think we saw all of kind of his potential in the opener. And, obviously had two crucial, like late half touchdown throws that kind of made that win possible. And I mean, also completed a 4th and 10 on that last drive that, really was impressive. He found Mason Fairchild to make that win possible. So he was cool under pressure. He, sometimes he ran when maybe he could have done something else, but they needed him to run a lot of times, and he made plays happen. So was I thought one of the more impressive debuts for a quarterback in quite a while.
Yeah, I think you nailed it. I mean, all of that is exactly right. Congratulations, you won our prize.
I did it.
But I think that's right. I mean, I think it was, you said the word was obvious, and I think it was obvious. He was absolutely the right choice, mostly because he got it done. Does that mean Jalen Daniels, Miles Kendrick couldn't have? We'll never know, right? But he got it done. He looked like he had an incredible amount of poise. I mean, we talked with Andy Kotelnicki, the offensive coordinator, on Wednesday about kind of his debut and his thoughts. And I mean, he didn't try to temper things at all. He said, hey, his upside's even higher now. And I think he's going to continue to get better and just continue to be more dynamic out there on the field. So I thought that was impressive. I think that says two things. Number one, Bean does have a pretty high ceiling. Number two, this coaching staff, it showed a little bit about their approach, right? They're not afraid. They're not afraid of high expectations. Right. They're not afraid to hold these guys to a high standard because they coach them hard and they expect them to execute and deliver and be in the right spots and do the right things. And my God, that doesn't sound that hard, but it has been hard here for the last 10 years. So cool to see that in sort of one comment or one interview, both that you have high hopes for a quarterback and that, the high hopes are warranted and part of this program now, part of this program at all positions. So I agree. I thought Bean was really good, and he was at his best when he had to be. I thought the O-line was there too, right? Like the O-line wasn't really good for the whole game, but I thought they were at their best when they had to be. That last drive, they gave him the time he needed, especially on that 4th and 10 to make that throw. And I thought they improved as a pass blocking unit throughout that game. It never really clicked for the running game. And there's a bunch of reasons for that. If you could give us the quick, Cliff's Notes version of why that is.
Yeah.
And again, it sounds like they're expecting better this week. They're expecting better play, better execution, and this line to not just continue to be here, but to elevate its game to here. And I think that's again a real good look at this coaching staff and what they're all about. But what was the deal with the running game in week 1?
Well, I think a lot of it had to do with kind of continuity and chemistry. If we're starting up front with the O-line, Lance Leipold mentioned this week at his press conference, he kind of laid it out like they're going into this game. And I mean, they haven't really had a lot of consistency just because Colin Grunhard has kind of, been limited at practices, and he obviously started and was able to play, but he also didn't maintain that right guard spot throughout the game. Yeah, Michael Ford playing his first college game. He's like subbing in and out at right tackle with Bryce Cabledew, but then he's also subbing in at right guard, playing for Colin Grunhard when Grunhard's off for a series or whatever. Malik Clark got hurt in the third quarter. and was out, and they had to plug Adagio Lopetti in. So, I mean, you're already coming into the season, you're already the O-line is kind of a vulnerable position group in a lot of senses, just because of like the guys that you have coming back. We know how much they struggled last year, and we know that everybody's been really positive about how they've improved through the offseason and kind of the progress they've made. But I think it's kind of a reminder of like how much it helps to just have like prolonged continuity with that group, especially. And when you can't have that, you're maybe going to run into some struggles. And we also should point out, like, the O-line wasn't great, but last year a lot of times the O-line was terrible.
Right.
Like, they weren't terrible. Like, I mean, I think Andy Kotelnicki mentioned this when we spoke with him. Just it'd be one of those situations where like one guy isn't on the same page, or one guy misses something communication wise with the other lineman he's playing next to, and he said everybody was culpable. It happened to everybody at some point.
Sure.
So that's where you get a lot of those kind of like negative run plays, or runs for 1 yard or 0 yards. But also there were some instances where maybe Velton Gardner didn't like kind of break where he needed to, or didn't kind of like seize the opportunity when there was maybe a crease to shoot through, type of things like that. So there were a number of factors, and I think Leipold mentioned the tight ends and perimeter blocking can be a lot better too. So a number of things add up to kind of make your running game almost non-existent, other than what Jason Bean was doing.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, Leipold did. He said flat out, I mean, it can get better in a lot of areas, and everybody played a part in that, from the linemen to the backers themselves, and even the coaches. I mean, he's not afraid to take some of the blame on there too. So that's why I think, you hear always, right, that week 1 to week 2, there's a big jump for a lot of players, for a lot of positions. That will be the most interesting one to watch this week, because it's tied so closely to their ability to stay in this game and be competitive. Jason Bean doesn't have to make a massive jump, right, from week 1 to week 2 for KU to be competitive. He's got to be better, and they want him better in week 2, and they want him better in week 7, and they want him better in week 10, and that's going to be a constant theme. But the line, if they have another performance like that, they probably won't be in this game. And
right, because we got to also take into the factor they're playing an FCS program in South Dakota and had some of these issues too, right? So the personnel they're going up against is just going to get better week after week for the rest of the season. Basically, you're playing a veteran Coastal team that turns basically all of its starters on defense and on offense, by the way. But
right.
But I mean, so you got that game, and then you're hopping right into Big 12 play with Baylor the next week. So the guys that you're going to be seeing in those fronts the next few weeks are going to be a lot better than what you saw against South Dakota.
Yeah, no question about it. And it will be one of those spots that you watch and you say, how much better do they get? And it's continuity. You said it. I mean, I saw Colin Grunhard way after the game, and he was in a boot. Maybe he's been in a boot the last couple of weeks heading into.
Yeah, he definitely has. Yeah.
So, this isn't just like a convenient excuse to say he's been banged up. I mean, there's definitely an injury there, and he's gutting it out, and they're trying to figure out how to piece it all together. So if they can find a way to get healthy, if they can find a way to get the same 5 moving forward, then that increases your chances of things clicking a little better there. But still, the next man up mentality, the too deep thing. I mean, these guys expect the second string to do just as well when they have to go in the game, and it'll be probably the biggest thing to watch in terms of what the change is from week 1 to week 2. Let's get back to Bean real quick, and then we'll move on. But Kotelnicki talked about, and I think Leipold too. I mean, some of the throws that he made late in the game, some of the throws that they had to have, especially on that last drive, were throws that he missed earlier in the game. And there's a lot of growth happening on the fly out there. It sounded like those coaches, as soon as he came off and missed a throw early in the game, they were ready to say, hey, here's where you had it. Here's what was open. Hang in there, trust your guys, and you'll be fine. But it also sounds like Jason Bean was the first to respond and engage with them in that conversation and say, yeah, I know. I missed that. Sorry. Here's what I got. Here's what I saw. That kind of thing. So I think his ability in game to process that quickly, and then to come right back, 2-3 quarters later and make a throw he has to make with the game on the line. I mean, that's as much as anything, as much as his good numbers, not great, but good numbers, as much as his ability to run, that his just mental preparation and process is probably the most exciting thing about having him in there right now, because this appears to be a guy who can handle this job and maybe be an actual advantage for this team rather than just a disadvantage or good enough. Maybe we can survive with him, like you've seen so many times over the past 10 years.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the sign of Jason Bean and just where he is as a college football player. Because I mean, we got to remember he's a redshirt junior, so it's his fourth year of playing college football. So
Right.
he's been around. He obviously started at North Texas, and also even though this is a kind of a jump up in the level of competition, going up to a Power 5 program, I think you saw kind of what that experience can do for you. If you're an older quarterback who's been in games and kind of has known that you need to learn from these mistakes, and it isn't really helpful if you don't learn until a week or two later from your mistakes. I think we saw an example of how he can respond, and I thought it was impressive that Kotelnicki said sometimes from a quarterback you don't know if he's gonna fix that problem like the next week, let alone in the same game.
Right.
So he was really impressed by how Bean did that.
Yeah, I think his running ability too is a real weapon. I mean, it's not anything new to college football, but it is new to Kansas. I mean, you and I were talking about this at the game, right? I mean, he's Kotelnicki said it today too. He's got track speed, so that's different than a lot of guys that KU's had at that position.
Yeah,
there's a lot of guys that haven't had quarterback speed. There's some guys that haven't had defensive lineman speed. So the fact that his legs are something he can use. And I know you talked to him this week, so did I. Like all good quarterbacks, he says he'd prefer to stay in the pocket and throw the ball down the field. But, I mean, the ability is there. He gets to that edge so fast that he's capable of taking something that breaks down up front or a bad play call against something that surprised them and turning it into maybe 3-4 yard gain pretty quickly and a positive, move the sticks type of situation. That's different for Kansas. That's not going to put them ahead of anybody else in the Big 12, but that could put them on par with some teams in the Big 12. And that could be really interesting as the season continues to play out. There's no better example of that than on that last drive, right? Where he has to sprint to the left.
Yeah.
He's not going to get the first down, but his ability to get out there puts the defense in a pressure situation, and the guy has to hit him, and that's a targeting call, and that's a first down, and that keeps that drive alive. And it was third down, wasn't it?
I believe so.
Yeah, so it wasn't do or die. They would have had a fourth down shot if that penalty didn't occur. But his ability to get out there and force the action, force that penalty in a sense. And so I think that is something that's different for this offense and different than we've seen, because even in a bad moment, even when something breaks down, he can at least present the possibility that something good can happen. And you saw that time and time again on Friday night. And I think as that continues to happen, not only is he going to gain confidence, but I think the rest of his team will start to believe, oh wow, we've got a legit weapon there. That this dude can save our bacon, so to speak. And let's smile about that and let's help him out. So I thought that was great. What else about his running ability stands out to you?
I mean, just that I think that he can get out on the edge and make something happen. And I don't think we've even seen the best of him as a running quarterback yet. There was still a lot of that he was just still getting used to. Some of it was, maybe some reads where he kept the ball and maybe could have, given it to Velton Gardner or Torrey Laughlin or whomever instead, and maybe it wasn't the right read. So he can get better there. And I think the more reps he gets with these guys, the better he's going to look. And I think we mentioned kind of the step up in personnel that KU is going to be seeing in these weeks to come. So I think his athleticism is going to have to be relied upon even more, probably, as more pressure comes, things break down maybe where you're not expecting them to, and you got to just make something happen. He seems to have pretty good instincts.
Very good point. And I like that Kotelnicki said too, we don't feel like we have to protect him. We don't have to feel like we put him in bubble wrap. I mean, we've got guys that can play behind him, so we're going to let him go do his thing. We're going to hope for the best. We're going to try to protect him, but we're not afraid to let him go make plays. And that's massive, because that gives him a chance, the freedom and the confidence to do it, and good things can happen from there. Obviously, he connected with Lawrence Arnold for 2 touchdowns, including the game winner, both really good throws, both great routes and plays by Arnold. He got Mason Fairchild involved, the 4th and 10, nothing bigger than that, but Fairchild flashed his athleticism with the one-handed grab as well and had a really good night as a receiver. Were there any other guys, real quick before we move on to what's next, any other guys besides those three that jumped out to you as obvious, sort of game balls for week one?
Yeah, I mean, I think like Trevor Wilson was kind of, I mean, maybe not a game ball, but I mean, was a guy that was really involved with the offense and seemed to have a good connection with Bean, good chemistry there. So that's promising that, they've got at least three guys that he feels comfortable with as passing targets. But I mean, on defense, I just thought the defensive line was so good throughout the game. And the amount of different players they were able to use was really impressive. It's not like they have a lot of times in past years. I feel like that defensive front is like, well, there's two guys that are good, and the other guys you'll just play who you have and see what happens.
Right.
Yeah, right. But I mean, they seem to have guys that they really like. I mean, maybe 8 deep. Like they played like 12 defensive linemen in that game, and at no point was it like a blowout. You're putting all the third stringers in, so
sure. Well, and that's with one of their best ones getting hurt too, and Sam Burt. So yeah. I mean, yeah, that I agree with you there 100%. I thought the young secondary looked pretty good, made some plays back there. Certainly OJ Burrows, right, made a couple of plays. Kenny Logan's all over the field, and he's making plays even if he's not making plays. You feel like he is because of his energy and because of the way he plays. And of course, he did have the kick return that almost went the distance. And he told me the other day that he was getting harassed by all of his D-backs that said, you got to get in. You got to get in. That's terrible, man. You got to get in. And of course he wanted to. And of course, he's down on the fact that he didn't, but I think he liked the opportunity and the fact that it was there. I mean, he was proud of that. It put them in positive territory, obviously, and it gave them a chance to score. That was the one where they went for it on 4th and goal and missed the short throw. Am I right?
They didn't, no points off of that possession. But
But aggressive. What do you think, speaking of 4th downs, what do you think of Leipold's 4th down management and situation? I mean, the way it seemed all preseason and really since he was hired and we first started talking with him, it seemed like he wasn't afraid to go for 4th downs, but he wasn't going to go out of his way to do it. I mean, I don't know that, what's the story that he said about the analytics guy who told him to go for it on 4th down, first drive of the game, and he almost punched him in the face, something like that.
Yeah, a few years ago at Buffalo.
Yeah, I mean that was that's kind of what I expected, right? I mean, he doesn't seem like a real gambler, but I do think he's willing to take some calculated risks, and so I don't know if this game really fit that. To be honest, I thought he was more aggressive than I expected him to be on 4th downs, and I don't know what you made of that, but it obviously didn't hurt him. But it was definitely an interesting sort of baseline to create.
Yeah. I think they ended up 1 for 3 on 4th downs. Probably to me the most telling one was that they were up in that 4th quarter before South Dakota scores to kind of go ahead. They go for it on 4th and short near midfield, but it's not plus territory. Right. And Bean comes up. It seemed like a bad spot. Seemed like he got it looking at it live, and I think some replay views you could kind of tell, he probably did get a bad spot there. Ultimately, Leipold didn't want to use his challenge just because, I mean, honestly, you never know how those challenges are going to play out.
Sure.
So I kind of see his thinking there. Like, even if it does seem obvious, you never know what the guy in the booth is going to think or what the refs are going to do with it. So you lose your one timeout in a tight game if you happen to lose that challenge, So that was kind of his explanation for not challenging that spot. But I thought that was an aggressive play call, and honestly, it looked like the right call because they got it. And I mean, that's a spot where you're up 10-7 4th quarter, and you're trying to keep the ball and you're trying to be aggressive. So I think that was a pretty good peek at maybe what he'll do in the future.
Yeah, definitely different there too, because if the percentage play is to punt there, maybe the percentage play is to go for it. Again, it looked like they got it, but either way, let's say they punt, South Dakota doesn't need a touchdown there to make something good happen. They just need to drive down and get a field goal opportunity to tie the game. So, maybe if they needed 7 to tie the game, it would have been a different mindset. It would have been a different, let's pin them back. Our defense is playing well. And, but obviously it was what it was. And it set up the dramatic finish. So, heck of a win. I don't know that the field needed to be rushed. I know there are a lot of KU fans that are upset about that. And I get that. But it was also the first win in like almost 2 full years. So, get excited, have fun. I mean, that's all people are asking for around here, right? Everybody wants the fans to participate in this thing. Well, they did. They rushed the field after you won a game. They are showing you in no uncertain terms, we like winning. Let's do more of this. So it's hard to criticize them. And they're mostly college kids. It looked like that all came from the student section. So they're having fun, I mean, I get the look. I see that it's not ideal, but man, when you're Kansas and you've had the decade that they've had, nothing's gone ideal. Nothing's been positive and good and holy, so have some fun when you can and really embrace it when it's there. So that leads into next week, this week, week 2, a much bigger challenge, as we talked about. What do you know about Coastal Carolina other than they're ranked 17th in the nation and they've got a 2-game winning streak against Kansas and they're really good? And they're an offensive team that defensive coordinator Brian Borland says has no weaknesses.
Right.
Sounds fun.
It sounds like a lot of fun. No, I mean, it's a team that obviously KU fans are familiar with because they've come to Lawrence and won each of the past 2 years. But probably kind of maybe the most discouraging thing from, if you're a KU fan, is that like this is the same team that just went 11-1 last year. So all those guys pretty much are back.
Right.
And not only that, but they're better because they've been around. They now have experienced this high level of success where at one point last year they were ranked like in the top 10 in the country. They just manhandled the Citadel in their opener, as you would expect a top 15 team to do, and they didn't even have to play their starters really for the entire game. It was so, I mean, they're coming in fresh. They're coming in with an extra day of preparation because they played on Thursday last week. So I mean, this is Lance Leipold kind of, I'm sure a lot of people like hate the pandemic for a number of reasons, but this game is only happening early in the Lance Leipold era because it was supposed to happen last year and they had to move it forward to this year, right? Because it's supposed to be a 1-1
at Coastal, right?
Yeah. So this series would be over if Coastal was able to, if KU was able to travel to Coastal last year, and they wouldn't have to worry about this. They'd play some much easier non-con game. So
like South Dakota.
Yeah, right. that type of game. But yeah, I mean, this is a program and a coaching staff that is really on this upward trajectory where like you almost feel like next year Jamie Chadwell is going to be at some SEC school or something.
Sure,
he's done a tremendous job there, and the offense, like Brian Borland was talking about with us, they do so many different things, and KU fans might remember this from last year and that opener, and just kind of like the versatility of what they did offensively. I mean, they run some kind of standard stuff, but then there's some option elements to a lot of what they do while spreading the field, and it just can become so difficult to defend. And if you make a mistake somewhere, you're going to get burned. So, I mean, this is an ultimate challenge, and going from South Dakota to Coastal Carolina in 1 week. I mean, man, it's going to be, it might be a wake up call for a lot of people.
Yeah, there's no doubt. And I think that's where you feel good about the coaching staff though, right? The way they prepare. These guys are going to be not only well aware of that, but also they're going to be prepared with a game plan that if executed can possibly work and can keep you in the game. And I think that you wrote a story about Chadwell talking about KU and what he's seen. Granted, it's one game, but he's also known of Lance Leipold for a number of years. And I mean, that's kind of what sounded like it stood out to him from watching KU's tape against South Dakota, was that these guys are in the right spots and they execute and they have a system and they have a plan and they go out and do what they've been coached to do. And for him to say that looks different tells you everything you need to know about what took place in the past. Of course, so does the record, and so does the fact that most of you listening here have lived through that. So no real surprise there. But it's what you want to hear. If you're in the present, it's what you want to hear. You want to hear this guy saying they look better, they look more fundamentally sound, they tackle, they're in the right spots, they get guys on the ground. I mean, that gives you a chance, and you got to catch a break here and there. You got to make a break here and there. You've got to execute almost flawlessly, I think, to be in a game like this. But it's a terrific opportunity for these guys too. I mean, they're a 4-touchdown underdog, rightfully so. And they've gotten really nothing to lose going down there. They should be loose. They should be ready. They should have fun. I talked to Trevor Wilson the other day about it, because I think I mentioned this last week, but KU's gone, 1-0, 7, now 8 times in the post-Mangino era, but they've only gone to 2-0 once, and that was back in 2011. So the fact that these guys have an opportunity to not only go to 2-0, but to do it on the road against a ranked team, I mean, it may not be likely in the eyes of most, but the opportunity is there. It's 0-0 right now. So the fact that that's, even at play, I talked to Trevor Wilson about it, and I said, this is not new for you. You've been 2-0. This is not something you've been waiting your whole life to be, or your whole career to be. And I thought his answer was awesome. I mean, he said, yeah, but I'm a part of this family now. And so, I realize, I already know how big this would be for all of us and for this program. And so it just, answers like that to me continue to show what this roster is about, but also the buy-in that's there, man. I mean, that's a guy who could have said, yeah, I don't know what that's all about, but we're going to go play hard and have fun. But he said, no, I'm taking that on my shoulders. I feel that pain too. I know that these guys haven't been 2-0, and we haven't been 2-0, and he used we, and I mean, I just think that's one instance of that happening across the roster right now. There's a lot of that going on, and I think that's something you can build on, and a reason to hope that something can be built that people want to see and people are proud of. So I thought that was interesting for sure. What do you make of the line? I mean, it's huge, it's massive. Is it too big? Is it too small? Is it right on the money? I mean, again, I think it opened at 27. It's been bet down a little bit. Some people taking those points. It's maybe 25.5 or something for Coastal right now. I don't know, man. That sounds like a lot, but I also think if you just think it through, it's basically winning each quarter by a touchdown. That doesn't sound like a lot when you put it that way, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it sounds like a complete blowout. And traditionally that doesn't make a lot of sense for a Power 5 team going against a Sun Belt team. But I mean, when you take into context everything with just the continuity of this Coastal program, the level they've been playing at the past year plus, and kind of where KU is, where this coaching staff didn't take over until May basically, and is kind of playing catch up. And there's a lot of guys that are new who are contributing. There's a lot of guys that have been around, but aren't used to winning these types of games.
Right.
So I think the line makes sense. I mean, I haven't made my final prediction yet. I'll probably do some more research and crunch those numbers and come up with something. But I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if it's in that 20 to 27 point range. Just that's what makes sense, just based on what we've seen out of both these teams.
Right.
Not only in week 1, but just kind of like over the past year or so. So.
Yeah, I think if you look at it, I mean, a lot of the line, if you're inclined to be that way and think Vegas, a lot of the line depends on what you think KU's offense is going to do. If you think KU's offense is going to score 21 points, you probably think, number one, you think it's going to go way over, which I think the number's 53. Well, that's probably going to go way over if KU can get almost half of that. Number two, I think you look at it as, if KU's offense is able to score 21 points, then that means to cover, Coastal's got to score about 50. Doable. They just scored 50, right? But but it definitely, that's kind of where you can evaluate that thing. If you think KU is going to struggle and only score 10 points or something, well, then they've only got to get to 38 points or something to cover that. 35 points. I mean, it makes it a total difference that way too. So I think it'll be I mean, it's obviously Vegas doesn't miss. They're probably right on the money for that. Did you? I think we talked about it, but what do you think of the guy that bet 14 safe and successful unders week 1, and on a $10 bet he won $80,000?
That's insane. I mean, first of all, I mean, just to come up with that parlay, I know. I mean,
had to be drunk. He's like, I'll take the under here, the under here, the under here, the under here.
Right.
Let's throw a few more unders in. Good. Racket. $10.
Yeah.
Here you go.
I just appreciate his commitment to come up with a 14 scenario parlay. I mean, let alone that it actually worked out in his favor. But yeah, that was nuts.
Totally.
That was one of the craziest things I saw from a pretty crazy weekend overall in college football.
It was a great opening weekend for sure. So before we get out of here, I'll let you finish this thing off with the biggest key for Kansas. I don't know that many people, if anybody, is going to be picking them to win, but I do think there's a handful of people out there that maybe think this can be more competitive than people think. Let's say that's the case. How does it happen? What does KU have to do to make this a competitive game that again goes into the fourth quarter, which is what Lance Leipold's been preaching since he got here? We want to get games into the fourth quarter. How do they do that this week?
Well, I mean, the offense has to be better. The run game was non-existent.
Sure.
And not to say that KU's defense is automatically going to do something spectacular against Coastal. It's going to be tough to stop that offense. But I mean, if KU's offense isn't giving you more than 14 or 17 points, you have zero chance. So I mean, something special is going to have to happen offensively, I think, for KU to really have a chance to win this game, because I just don't see this Coastal offense is unique enough, and this defense is still kind of, they've only been together for a week with this formation of it, right? Under Brian Borland, all these specific guys playing together. So I just think that they have a lot of ground to make up as far as like where they are at defensively compared to where Coastal's at offensively. So if the KU offense isn't moving the chains, if they're not sustaining drives, they're not keeping Coastal off the field, not scoring points, you've got zero chance to winning this game. So I think the offense has to be a lot better.
Yeah, well said. Their first 4 drives on Friday night last week, 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out. Didn't get a first down until the second quarter. 7 points at halftime. That came late in the half.
Mm-hmm.
You got to not only be better, but start faster, right? You can't ease your way into this game. If you go 3 and out 4 times in a row, you might be down 28-0, and then it's ball game. And that's kind of how that went last year. That game was, the final was, I think, 38-23, but when I saw that looking back again,
it wasn't that close.
No, not even close. I mean, I was shocked that ended up being a 15-point game, but a little bit of production in the second half when the game was long over by KU, and Coastal had kind of taken their foot off the gas. So we'll see. This is going to be really interesting. I think, nothing's impossible. Like I said, it's 0-0. KU's got a chance to go down there and find a way to compete. That's where we're at right now. One thing that I've kind of wondered is, it sounds weird because 2 years ago, Coastal Carolina came in here and got their first ever Power 5 win in program history. What was that, 12-7?
Yeah.
Yeah. So big win for them. That was obviously to be celebrated. Last year, they came up here and kind of kicked KU's butt and celebrated it again, because they're like, look, we proved that wasn't a fluke. We validated what we did last year. How about that? How about us? We're awesome. Let's roll. And then they did roll. And now I just don't know how excited do they get about Kansas coming to their place. I mean, there's some human nature there that says, well, geez, Kansas kind of sucks. We own them. Like this may not be that hard. And then maybe that plays to KU's advantage. I don't know. I don't know that that's enough of an advantage, but it could be, especially if it's a subconscious sort of thing, right? Just human nature that you don't bring your best because these guys aren't any good. Maybe it's different because of the new coach and because of the new quarterback and because of the new system and things like that. It doesn't sound like Chadwell's the kind of guy that's going to allow that to happen. But again, human nature is such that if you just beat somebody twice and now you have them at home, there may be a tendency there for you to just think, well, this won't be hard. I mean, it just won't. So
well, here's the thing. Big 12 teams, SEC teams, ACC teams, you name it. They don't play at Coastal Carolina. This is a first. This is the first time a team from any Power 5 conference has gone and played at Coastal. So, I mean, the crowd's going to be nuts, and the players are going to feed off of that. You're a top 20 team. You're rolling. I mean, I don't think that plays a factor. And
they'll be ready. Yeah, you're right. That's and again, the last thing they want to do is kind of blow it by, hey, we had a good thing going, and boy, we just lost to Kansas at home. That can't, So I get it. By no means do I think that is a make or break factor. I think it's if it's a factor at all, it could be something that KU is able to stay in the game a little longer with maybe jumping on them a little earlier, maybe more than people expect. A lot of maybes in there. If you didn't hear that, rewind this later when it's posted and just listen to all the maybes.
Someone tweet a maybe count to us.
All right, for Benton Smith, I'm Matt Tate. That is it. A look back at a successful week 1 and a challenging week 2 for Lance Leipold and the Kansas football program. Kickoff 6:30 p.m. Friday night on ESPN2. Benton will be down there doing his thing. I will not be. I will be in Las Vegas at a fantasy football dorks convention. So wish me luck. And, hey, I wish Benton luck. But, yeah, we'll have all kinds of coverage at KUsports.com, as always. And then we'll break it down next week, too. But I will be watching. You don't have to worry about that. My draft is at
ESPN2. No worries whatsoever. Right there on a number of screens for you.
Don't have to stream it, whatever. It's going to be a piece of cake. For Ben Smith, I'm Matt Tate. We'll talk to you guys next time on the KU Sports Hour. Take care, everyone.